Ronan O'Gara, good morning to you.
Hi Adrian, hi Hannah, how are you?
Morning.
Flying, thanks. How are you keeping?
Great, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I was manipulating the crab in the background, and Tommy, the producer, said that you would spot it. I said he will spot it.
Is that good Ile de Ré shells, is it? Is that what's going on back there?
10 minutes talking about it, which I don't want to talk, because you only have
I wouldn't have mentioned it, to be honest with you, until you brought it up, but
yeah, you're I don't know, you're great. What was your vision like back in the day, Adrian? Were you good at spotting stuff? You were?
Very observant, my father used to always tell me. He didn't have very much else to praise me about, Ronan, so that was what I used to get.
Very good.
You've had a couple of weeks off, have you? Is that
oh, it's great. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Yeah, we had 10 weeks in a row, and then no game for 2 weekends, and the difference it makes was huge. Yeah, so obviously, I suppose your head going into the Bordeaux game compared to where it is now, it's poles apart. It's interesting as a study, interesting as an exercise. You kind of think that you're not stressed or you're not under the pump, but I most certainly was. So it was great to clear the head, get refocused, and back at it now, starting with Po tomorrow and 13 weekends in a row, including Europe, which is exciting. So here we go.
Yeah. What do you when you say that you could refresh or refocus? How do you do all that?
Dubai helps.
Good man. A bit of sunshine.
Yeah, it's amazing what a bit of sunshine does in winter. A bit of family time, a bit of fun, a bit of getting away from it, a bit of literally not being eaten by it. So yeah, time is definitely important, and I suppose sunshine and a bit of swimming was essentially what the recipe was this time.
Is there a moment in that, like, is it a couple of days in, is there a moment where you're fully relaxed or you're getting into it, or is there a moment in all of that where you just go, that's it, I've hit the reset button now and I'm ready to go, or is it more of a gradual process for you?
There is, yeah. When your wife goes up the water slides instead of you, that's the moment you know. That's the moment you know you're relaxed. No, there isn't. I think it's. I think the first 4 days are definitely. You're still thinking that you're away from it, but you're not. And then after a little bit of 7-8 days, I think you kind of do realise, well, I as a leader of the group wasn't probably where I needed to be. Our staff were definitely probably suffering a little bit, and the players were probably not where they needed to be. But it'll never be perfect, but we're always aiming for that. But it was interesting just to see how, when games roll after roll, you just be kind of taken by the time pressures, as opposed to every Monday and Tuesday. Maybe you can, I suppose, do your day differently, and that'll be the plan going forward.
And Ron, just like, can you actually take a break? Like, you know, I know myself, if I'm off on holidays and I've no rugby or football or anything like that, that I'm still thinking about the games or whatever's coming up. Like, can you actually separate yourself and take that break from the start, or, you know, does it still kind of run in the background, in the back of your head?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, I think, because when you're a player, you never can. And I think the older you got, the more competitive nearly you got, because you realise I don't have that many years left, and the body doesn't work like it used to, but it also is smarter. No, you're only a young one. There's plenty of miles in those legs left. But I think it's, as a coach, where I probably, the mental turmoil sometimes is something you have to watch, but that's helped by exercising. But then when you're finished playing, you've played at a top level, you're kind of like, well, going for a jog isn't much fun or isn't very amusing, but you need that to clear the head, and exercise is wonderful in that regard. But as we all know, the only time you regret doing exercise is that kind of 30-minute period before it, whether I do it or not, and then afterwards everything is good again. So when you're coaching, it is different, I think, but I think it's a different exercise, and probably organising yourself mentally as opposed to physically.
Yeah. Can you get the Sunday Times in Dubai?
No. Well, I'm sure you can, but
you didn't.
No.
Did you didn't hear about the Sunday Times last weekend?
No, what did I miss?
There was I would have thought this was on the top of your holiday reading list. Roy Keane in conversation with David Walsh he picked through. There was a lot of interesting bits and bobs in it, but there was one that stood out particularly, and I'll read you the section here. He was in Wellington in 2008. I don't know if that rings any bells to you.
2008.
Roy Keane. He was down there. He was in with the All Blacks, and after that he was walking up the street and ran into some interesting characters, including yourself, Paul O'Connell and Quinny, I believe, and it seems like you went for dinner. This looks like it's all brand new news to you, by the way.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I remember. Yeah, I remember.
I'll give you the passage here. So he says that was the context to it. He'd been in with the All Blacks, gave them a bit of a pep talk, walking down the street, bumps into you lads, and you're all like, "What? You've been in with the All Blacks? Come on, we're going for dinner. Let's have a chat." So I'll take it up here in Roy's words here. So he says, "So Ronan is there. He wants to know about the All Blacks. How are you getting on with them, Roy?" You ask. "Brilliant. They're good lads. You know you're in for a tough game. Can I ask you something?" Says Ronan. "Go on. Have they mentioned me?" And Roy says, "I swear he hasn't had his main course yet." "Do I lie?" he wonders to himself. "To be honest, Ronan, they mentioned you on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. I effing knew it. They're effing always going after me. It was brilliant," says Roy. "I went to the test match on Saturday. The weather was atrocious. One of the worst games ever." I think what he was trying to get across was an insight into your mindset of, you've been in camp. What are these lads talking about me? They're always after me.
Yeah, but I remember that dinner. Yeah, he did talk about it. And he goes, "What's the game plan? The game plan is they're going to attack you." But that's no different for All Blacks, Australia, South Africa, England, France. That's the reality if you're playing number 10. So anytime there's an attack, they're going to go after the 10 channel. That's what happens, and that's what did happen, and they got a lot of joy out of it on many occasions. I suppose what we didn't do at that time was probably move me around between 10, 12 and 13 to essentially not take the brunt of the force of their attack at many stages. But yeah, it was very funny. It was a great dinner, actually. I remember that. It was because it's with Roy, and Roy doesn't dilute anything, so it was I remember that. Yeah, it was a good chat, really good chat, actually. Good dinner.
The not diluting anything, the company that he was in last night, I can only imagine the type of conversation. What was it, when you say it was great, what was it that was good about it? What did you take from it?
Just because it was something that I suppose it was weird in the fact that is this actually Roy Keane that we're at dinner with, and it was, and he was very normal and down to earth. Paul, he was there as well. Quinny was there. We had very different, interesting characters in our team as well, and just the capacity to have a real dinner with him and I suppose probe him and search him and ask him decent questions was very revealing and very interesting. And the fact that I think we had if it was 2008, we'd probably just won 2 European Cups there. And I can remember in 2005 when we met Roy in the lobby and with Lawrence Delalio in the Vale of Glamorgan Hotel before we flew off to New Zealand, and Roy was asked how did he think it go in front of myself and Delalio, and he goes, New Zealand will win 3-0. But he didn't mean it in a malicious way or anything. He just said it, and that was his opinion, and that's, I suppose, why he's respected.
Yeah. What are you tapping him up for when you're he was a Sunderland manager at that time, or might have been just sort of left him? Were you tapping him up for coaching insights or player insights? No,
the peak of the playing days. No, this was all playing. Just,
right.
Yeah, no, there was no coach at it. So that's what, it's nearly 13 years ago, isn't it? 14 years ago. It's a long time, as we know, moved. So no, we were in the peak player mindset those days.
And you're trying to, what had happened was he'd been in the All Blacks team meeting from early in the morning. They'd given him full insight into the game plan and trusted him to not go off and meet up with another Cork man and obviously give them an insight. And I presume he held his word, did he? Or did he?
No, but it was just for sure. He would have been there. So it was like he was playing against Ireland at the weekend when you're invited in like that as a kind of to shadow the coach or the playing group in New Zealand or in any team. So he would have been aware exactly. So the trainers in any setup aren't going to be diluting their words in terms of what they want their players to achieve, especially before a test match. So what happens in that situation is Roy would have heard everything, and obviously my name coming up, he would have been probably laughing a bit in terms of knowing he was going for dinner tonight, kind of going, well, yeah, I know what the game plan is, and yeah, Roger's going to see a lot of traffic in his channel, but that's the same for most test games at Tier 1 level, that's for sure.
Did you use that? I definitely remember speaking to you after games where that would have been the case, and as you say, maybe it was the case more often than not, but would you have used that, even though like it's just an accepted thing even now that you try and hit the 10 channel as much as you can, would you have used that as a, like, would that have given you a bit of chippiness on the pitch that I'm the main man here and they're trying to get me and I need to do everything in my powers to try and avoid that? Would you have used that to kind of counter it in some ways?
No, not really. In reality, it was either, normally Dave Wallace inside you, Darce outside you, and Rico at 13. So when you have me there, if you have any bit of intelligence, you're going to try and run through this guy or run as near as possible to him all day. So that's what happens off strikes, off phase one. But in the phase game, it's a little bit harder to get at you because Wally was incredibly good at tackling for me most of the time, and then Darce was excellent as well. But there was times when you just have to try and get him down as best you can. But it's obviously changed now in Ireland because I suppose it's one of the strongest parts of Johnny's game is he's an excellent defender. So teams have to look about it going differently.
Yeah, look, speaking from experience, like, I don't know if a coach is worth their salt in a game if they're not having a look at the 10 and seeing how they can kind of disrupt his game plan, and once you have a bit of trust in your players around you, like that your flanker's going to make the tackles and kind of keep you safe in some ways, and that your centre's going to run hard balls so that you're not taking hits and having to do some of the dirty work, so you can kind of get on with helping your team around the field and making good decisions. You're going to do it all right, but as I mentioned, like, it's definitely changing the 10 position. Johnny has perfected the choke tackle, and teams are less inclined to kind of run down his channel as much because of that, but there's still opportunities there, and as you said, when you step into the 10 position, you kind of know that teams are coming for you, flankers are coming for you, 12s are coming for you, and you need to be ready for that. It's a physical game. Exactly. You got to step up and make your tackles.
Yeah, that's the bottom line, exactly. You got to step up and make your tackles, but what you also want to do is make sure that your key playmaker in attack has sufficient energy to be able to see, I suppose, opportunities when he has the ball. But the big difference in Ireland in November probably has been the fact that they've spent so much time in attack that they look like a different team, and they've done that by being able to control the ball, I think, and rugby hasn't changed in the fact going back however many hundreds of years is that you want the boys that are most comfortable at dictating the play to have energy for the right, I suppose, tasks they have, as opposed to if they're hitting rocks and they're defending, it's not really, there's another 14 guys on the pitch that can help in probably doing that role better.
Yeah, look, I think in attack Ireland showed some sublime skill and some really good phase play, but just picked up there, like, do you think maybe enough questions weren't asked about their defence because their attack was so good and they had so much possession?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think as you know, at the top level, like little things like footwork and running lines and accelerations and timing of the pass make a big difference. I think if you analyse probably in the last 24 months potentially, it was probably very evident when an Irish forward was going to run into contact. While you look at Ireland now, lately, they are very, I think, hard to predict. Is this guy in a carry mode? Is he gonna play the ball? Is he going to feint with the ball? I think they've got their timing and alignment between the forwards and backs really well organised.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you have world-class players like Tyg Furlong who are able to do that, running with ball in hand, throwing no-look passes, offloads, stuff like that. It does make Ireland look like a different team, very, very unpredictable. And that's what you like to see. It's great to see forwards being able to have that handling, that footwork, being able to do those out-the-back passes, and just keeps defence guessing. And as you said, it's those little 1% that can change a game at the top level.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that comes from a probably competitive camp. You look at the Irish team now, there's huge competition. I think there's maybe one or two spots and not so, but you know, when you have someone really chomping at the bit and trying to get into that team, the team nearly runs itself, and it's easy for the management. But you, from Ireland forwards point of view, there's incredibly competition in the back row, in the second row, and probably at hooker, at you know, I mean, when you've Keane Healy not starting, it tells you how competitive an environment you have. So, like, once you have like that at your disposal, it makes training incredibly competitive. Once training is competitive, you usually have transfer, and that's what you can see now, that they've probably they're playing with a great tempo, but with a big deck to choose from.
Yeah, huge depth, and it's great to see. It's great for the team. And
one of those positions, and no two better people to talk about it, obviously, that maybe there's not that. Sorry, there is depth, but in terms of experience, and I know you're talking about it in the Examiner this morning, Ronan, about the 10 position. Joey Carberry has just turned 26. He'll be 28 by the end of the next World Cup. He'll no longer be that sort of young buck with this. He'll still have plenty of years to play, but that's not like the field is open up ahead of him. We're all in, obviously, now for the next 22 months on Sexton. Can I ask you just a slightly different question maybe than we've spoken about before? How do you go about keeping Joey Carberry happy over that period, in that he'll be 28 by the end of the next World Cup, and the guy he's trying to shunt out of there isn't going anywhere for the next 2 years?
Well, you don't know that. You don't know, because what happens at this level and at that age is that you kind of, I'd say in Johnny's situation, he'd be taking it season to season. So, like, he's going nowhere because there was no one to push him anywhere. Now, from the Argentinian game, I suppose one of the big winners was the management in that regard, because Joey Carberry played the way he did. I think we all know he's an excellent runner, but his game management looked very good and his goal kicking looked very good. So it's probably a starting point for Joey, in the fact that he hadn't presented fit every Monday to be able to be picked. So it's like a new season, new career starting from started last Sunday for him. So, I mean, there's 4 rounds of Europe before you get to the Six Nations. There's other games. So I'm sure the management will have a plan about how they want to use their 10s, but
does he see any game time for you in the Six Nations?
I'm sure he will. I think the Six Nations is hugely confrontational. Is that the word?
That's the one.
Robust competition, and you're going to need minimum 2 in each position. Like, there is always, you need 3, you know. And I think you looked at Harry Byrne coming on the last day, and he looked at easy, but he hasn't had enough games for Leinster either. So obviously he'll play for Leinster, Johnny will play for Leinster, and Joe will play for Munster, and then the 3 of them will try and play for Ireland. And then it's up to the Irish management to because you can't just keep playing Johnny. That's not the plan, because with all respect, the World Cup is still, we're midway through the cycle. Japan seems like such a long time ago. We have the same amount of time before France happens, Adrian. So like a year out from a World Cup, there's no issue in blooding new players. Joey Carberry isn't a new player. Harry Byrne is a new player, but like, they still have a 10-month window where they need to find their feet and get up to speed, because it's I think at that age profile in international rugby, with all the respect for Johnny, you need a plan B.
Yeah, I think nothing's more evidence than with Johnny out now for the next couple of weeks with that injury. Like, you know, he won't get game time there, and will Leinster go with Ross Byrne? Will they go with Harry Byrne? You know,
yeah, well, exactly.
Joey should hopefully get a good run of games. You know, he has competition from Ben Healy himself, but that should kind of put him hopefully in a good frame of mind, and with a good bit of rugby behind him leading into the Six Nations.
Yeah, all right.
You're right. Munster and Leinster will do what suits them best, not what suits Ireland best, because they've got important games, and that's the reality of what happens, you know.
Yeah, well, look, good to see you back and refreshed, and we'll get the load on that crab at some point on the track. I'm really intrigued by it now. I wasn't interested at all until you mentioned it, so we'll get details on that again. Good man.
Go away and have a coffee. Good luck. Cheers.
Thanks, cheers. Ronan O'Gara on the line there. What would you do, Hannah, in terms of the Six Nations? Do you deliberately set out with in mind, like I personally think there's going to be a bit of management to Joey Carberry over the next couple of years, in that you can't, he understands maybe that he's going to be second fiddle to Sexton, but at the same time he's got to see game time, both from his own engagement point of view and from an Irish progression point of view. Do you set out in advance of that and say, listen, you're going to get this game and that's how we're going to work that?
I don't know if you can plan it. As we say, Johnny's currently injured. He's obviously expected to be back in a couple of weeks, but you just don't know. I think you got to take it. Come December, you kind of have an idea. We all know that Johnny's our number 10 and he's the one we'd love to go with. But at the end of the day, first game into the Six Nations, Sexton could be gone after 10 minutes and we have to rely on Carberry. He'll definitely see game time, definitely in the Italy game anyway, but I'd love to see him get a little bit more because, as you say, with sport you just don't know
fire him
what's
in
going to
against
happen.
Scotland and let him at a game like that where we can just have a bit of a look, like you say. I mean, we're obviously talking about the perceived lesser nations in the Six Nations, but like just letting him have a couple of game times, so if it comes to it in the World Cup, that he's not going in totally raw.
Yeah, but I'd also hope that, I presume, I don't know Joey, but I presume he's a competitive guy, and that I would hope he's not content with being, Johnny's ahead of me, and I'm number 2 here, happy to get on the bench. I would hope that he's like, do you know what, I want to show that I can be the number 1 guy coming up for the World Cup, and actually start to really push Johnny a little bit, he may not get there, but it'll only make him a better player, it'll make Johnny a better player, and it'll make the team better. These guys are professionals, they're playing the top level, and they should be ambitious and want to be the best in their position. And if I was him, I wouldn't be content with the number 2 spot.
We've viewing on YouTube, considering Scotland perceived weaker nation. I don't know really.
I wouldn't agree that Scotland are weaker. They've put in some good performances. They've some excellent players.
The point being, you're not going to put them in against England. You're not going to put them in against Wales, and you're probably not going to put them in against France.
They're maybe the teams we need to put them in against. Because if it comes to the latter stages of the World Cup, and we don't have Johnny, or Johnny can't last 60 minutes. As Roger was saying, they do target 10s. What if Johnny is gone?
Yeah. Andy Farrell has to be comfortable that that's not a gamble, right? Isn't that
exactly. That's what I mean. He needs to play him, and so that Joey hopefully can show him, I'm well able to play these teams. I'm well able to pull the strings, and put the team around the park where we need them to be, and take our points when they're on and stuff like that. And he'll only get that through playing in the Six Nations. Essentially, while it's great to get results in the Six Nations, this current Six Nations means nothing. So why not?
What about Greg McWilliams, Ireland now? A lot of chopping and changing. I've lost count of the number of out halves that they've had post yourself. It's a very different conversation in some ways. What's your take on that situation?
Yeah, look, it's been a difficult position for Ireland throughout the years. We had Nora Stapleton was there for such a long time before she retired, and she left a huge hole there when she left. And I think we'd struggled over the years to find a 10 that I suppose fitted the game plan and played the way the coaches wanted to over the years. And we tried Niamh Briggs in there, and we tried numerous other players, but myself included, both myself and Niamh Briggs were back 3 players kind of converted to 10, and it just has been a problematic position for Ireland, and it's one that is so pivotal, as we mentioned, for kind of trying to get a team into the right positions around the park, and it just needs consistency, and I think Stacey's done a great job there for the team over the last few years. She has so many aspects to her game, but the problem there is that she's a contracted Sevens player currently playing in Dubai in about 10 minutes, I think,
right, okay.
with the Sevens. And, we had to play Enya Breen there. Again, another player who's not a 10, converted from a centre. And now I'm thinking for this upcoming Six Nations, is Greg McWilliams going to go with Enya Breen at 10 for the Six Nations? Is he looking around for somebody else? Will he have Stacey Flood back? And unlikely, maybe for a couple of games, because the Six Nations clashes with a couple of World 7 series around that time. But yeah, look, it's tricky. It really is tricky. And having played in the club scene the last couple of weeks, I haven't seen too many 10s who I've played against that would be up to the grade.
Right. You touched on the sevens issue and the it's more of a structural issue, right? Like it's away from a straight team selection. It's deeper than that. What have you made, I wonder, of everything that's gone on, looking now from the outside in over the last while, between the Rugby World Cup fallout, the Anthony Eddy comments obviously a couple of weeks back, the facility situation that we had with the provinces not that long ago, and everything that's gone on around that from the outside looking in?
Yeah, look, it's difficult. It's difficult for me, who not so long ago was part of that setup and, you know, had been for a very long time. And again, the failure to qualify for the World Cup was a really, really tough one to take, you know. And I've trained with those girls for so long. I know the work they put in, and unfortunately, we didn't get the results on the day, you know, and performances maybe didn't warrant that. And that's something that players have owned up to, you know. But it seemed to me like the players wouldn't have had an issue with taking responsibility for that. It was just that the inquiry was ongoing into it, and the nature of the comments in that instance, particularly being so public at that time, preempting what might come down the track. Yeah, I think, like, you know, the players themselves know they didn't perform, like, and they genuinely would put their hand up and say that, you know. But like, we used to pride ourselves, and this is when I was in there, and I hope nothing has changed, but like, it's not just the players on the pitch, it's a whole squad, and that includes team management. And maybe I think some of those comments came across as it was the girls who failed to do their job as opposed to the whole squad in that aspect of things. And it was disappointing to hear, you know, that blame was kind of placed solely on them when it was a squad effort, management including, you know, and Anthony Eddy there. And he was a coach of mine for a very long time, and he gave me plenty of opportunities both in 7s and 15s, but it is just difficult. The 7s, 15s crossover does not help, you know, because a lot of players who, you know, are doing well, maybe underage or at club level, are whisked off to 7s, and maybe 15s doesn't get the development that it needs, you know, and the players that it needs. And I don't know, it is a difficult one. You know, Greg has a tough job on his hands coming in to get a squad together that he feels is worthy of, you know, winning a couple of games at the Six Nations and building a squad around the next World Cup. And he's going to have a tough job, you know, with morale being at an all-time low, I'd say, right now. And thankfully, you know, they won their couple of games there to send off Junior on a high, but kind of probably only papers over the cracks a little bit. You know, it's not job done. Back on the horse when we go again. There's a lot of work to be done to get these guys in a good position to play and play well against the likes of England and France.
The optics of it weren't great, I suppose, is the thing. And when you're feeling little left sort of hung out there on your own, and probably not great timing. And look, you hope that Anthony Eddy and Devin Usafora, they've learned the lessons from that, and everybody's hopefully on the same train going forward. As you say, there's maybe a clean slate now with Craig McWilliams coming in. Righto, it is 8:20. Lots still to come on the show. Do keep your comments coming into us, by the way. Lots of good stuff coming into us this morning on YouTube and on the various other platforms as well. We have lots still to come here on OTB AM. We're going to hear from Alan Brogan. We're going to be talking football with Stephanie Roach, and up next we're going to catch up with Sean O'Hara.